Good evening. It's such an honor and pleasure for me to be here among you. And
thank you to the Conduit for hosting this event and for the willingness to engage on such an important topic and to ask the uncomfortable questions, to confront some of the unpleasant realities, and to hopefully find ways forward. And I'm very grateful to be here in the company of Shukria. It's good to see you again after many years, and it's great to see friends of Afghanistan in the audience as well.
I do believe this friendship means a lot to Afghans. To me, it means a lot. Since I've been here, I saw lots of love, understanding, respect, and, to be honest, support from the society, from the people, from the individual, from the old friends of Afghanistan, and particularly from the new generation in the United Kingdom. They are completely thinking different. All the events I've been, it's given me a positive energy, and it's remind me my country and the people of Afghanistan are not anymore alone. If some governments, some politicians, and some politics put line, there are great nation and generation that whom they can understand what humanity means.
I appreciate you giving that sort of reminder to our audience here. And I did want to say, sort of in opening, that Clarissa, our CNN's senior international correspondent, was not able to make it because she's deploying to Ukraine. And that's one of the reasons I think this evening is important, because it's very important that the glare of international media attention remain on Afghanistan, and that generally that the public remain engaged. We saw all of the stories of heartbreak and heroism of those trying to make their way and escape the Taliban after the events of August 15th and the collapse of Kabul, the arrival of the Taliban, the heartrending images that we saw of the desperation of people trying to escape. It's very easy to be transfixed by those images and to be caught in the sort of the drama, the human drama that's unfolding. But another drama is unfolding here, and I was reminded of that when we were having a chat beforehand, which is the drama of displacement. There are thousands and thousands of Afghans from all walks of life, but many of the country's best and brightest, who were forced to flee, who were dealing with the trauma of the loss of their own country, and the trauma of displacement and beginning their lives in a new country. Many different countries. I've known Afghans everywhere from Mexico, Qatar, to Greece. There are many here. Some are staying in a hotel, I think, on Edgware Road, not very far from here. And I think Shukria would be best positioned to tell you in the first person, through her own story, what her experience was, how she got here, and what the way forward is.
Despite of all the difficult times I had back home in my own beloved country, with the great support and help of United Kingdom, and particularly their military mission in Afghanistan, I was being evacuated. Actually, before the collapse of Kabul, I was at the airport on my normal trip, but finally the collapse happened and I was been at the airport. My name, my face, my voice was been the biggest enemy for me at that time, because I am I could not say celebrity, but a very popular face and name and voice back home, criticizing Taliban, seeking for human rights, women's rights, and all other things. It was the difficult time, maybe none of you have the experience the same as I, that you're fighting entire your life, half of my life, I fought for the identity I made, the values I stand. But all of them were become my enemy, and that's why the Taliban was after it. So, after 1 week, devastation, changing places, wearing different type of outfit, putting 10 layers on my face just to cover, keeping my mouth shut. Finally, 3 different organizations cooperate with each other, which is I get to the plane to the United Kingdom. After passing days on quarantine, and due to I was diabetes, badly mental ill, and still in a trauma, and during that first time at the airport, all my legs was been wounded, and I wasn't able to visit a doctor during my time in Kabul. I was really required to visit a doctor and receive my medication. So I asked the hotel that when the interview, when the home office, when the immigration will come for interview, they say, leave your details and go. I did. I visit my mom because she's in London. And of course, it wasn't easy. Till today, I'm somebody's hanging, not on the air, not on the ground. It's very difficult after 5 months. I have no documentation. I'm not in any bridging hotel. I'm not someone which is I could say that I've been evacuated, but all those rights and privileges or facilities which is evacuees was been eligible to get, I'm not. Beside of that, I had the chance to be with my husband because he got the chance to be in a hotel room. And they say, okay, you can stay with him. And I say, oh, thank you, that's great. Because it's also being apart, it's also ruining your private life, which is now we are separated, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, that time will say. The bad thing was to be witness. Kids, for almost 4 or 5 months with their parents, living in a hotel. Hotel life is a very luxury, just for a vacation. But spending days and nights, standing every day 3 times in a queue for a piece of bread, for a cup of tea, it's not really pleasant. And particularly after passing all the trauma, I don't think it's easy. And none of us, we don't know when the procedure will start, when it get in. It doesn't mean I'm not appreciating the effort of United Kingdom government. I do appreciate. I'm very grateful and I'm thankful for them. They opened their heart and their door to us. But meanwhile, I think it's very necessary to accelerate the procedure. Because those Afghans are here. It's not for the sake of any kind of job. Women here, we are here just because we was working with the United Kingdom as their partner. A large number of them was really working with their military. And because of them, their life and their family life was been in danger. So we've been labeled being Western puppets or being, let's say, in our language, Anglais or Britain or whatever, or US or all Westerns. But when it comes to the reality, we are the one that it may take ages for us to be integrated, to understand who we are, to know what's our legal status, which is for the time, I don't know. I cannot travel. I was been invited to several international conferences and forums, which is I was member of that, but I don't have the right to travel because if I leave United Kingdom, I wouldn't be able to come back. That is the frustration I had. Someone which is, I don't know who I am. It's not I only lost my country. You can't believe what identity means. It's hard. When at the airport they saw my passport say, I think it's invalid anymore. That's very difficult. What happened? What happened to my country? What happened to my people? And why? Who's taking the responsibility? Putting 35 million's life in danger? Leaving a great geography to head of terrorist group? Is anyone saying I am responsible? Yes, we are responsible as a people of Afghanistan. We try our best to pay the price of a friendship, being your allies, and having commitment for democracy. But what's at the end? I think it's not like we want a happy ending story, but at least a story which is make us to keep our heads up and feel proud. A successful end, which is unfortunately all the life, treasure, time was just been replacing Taliban by Taliban. That's not what we deserve. That's not what those life which has served Afghanistan, they don't deserve. That's what humanity and this globe didn't deserve. The government to be collapsed and the terrorists to be winner. I'm not saying there was no shortcome. No, there was a lack of, let's say, political commitment in Afghanistan. But what about others? What about the people? If a few corrupt politician was not making the right decision, why we should be punished, the entire nation, putting in the hands of so irresponsible barbaric groups? Right now we are talking here. I am safe physically, but mentally I'm not. Because every single day, I would say every single hours, there are news from Afghanistan. And unfortunately, there's no good news. Every day, people are asking either for the evacuation because they are living under great threat, or the women, which is they are going on the streets and they're protesting. They're asking for their rights. Their life in danger, and I'm empty hands. I can't do anything. Or just being witness of the great young generation to be shot by gun every day. And those brave ladies, which is they've been disappeared. Even just 2 nights before, Taliban was took custody a girl. They went to their house, and she was sending her life post on the Facebook. And then later on, they don't take the responsibility. They say, we don't know. It's just those people, they want to make a file to go out. No, that's not true. Those brave women are standing for their rights. Sorry, I just lost the link. You say the situation, I'm here. I think the UK government need to rethink about the resettlement, about those whom there was been evacuated. Sooner or later, I think there's a great potential that they can use, and they could put them back in the labor market, or politically they can take the advantage, their ideas, or at least something. You cannot, for me it's very hard after 5 months and maybe 6 months, because even today the Home Office told me that we don't know when you will be biometric, we don't know, it may take a couple of weeks. So I say by end of maybe March, probably. Being a hostage somehow, it's maybe not the right word to explain, or maybe not the right sentence to express, but this is the right situation that I'm thinking I'm on it. Or probably I'm under extreme mental pressure, because on one hand, seeing what I lost, on the other side, the challenges, how to move forward, and under which circumstances I am personally under.
In many ways, what you're describing is that you're still in Afghanistan mentally, and you're in touch. You're following the news daily, and the news is quite grim. If we look at a country that was essentially the ward of the international community, that depended on international support, is now in an economic free fall. There's serious food insecurity. Millions are at risk of starvation. Yet there's a debate in foreign capitals about, the Taliban is not a government that's recognized. What needs to be done in order to deliver aid? There are a lot of practical obstacles to that. And in your view, what should be done? For instance, is it possible, given should Afghans be, as you said, be punished for the consequences of larger geopolitical actions that were entirely out of their control? Should aid be withheld? Should salaries go unpaid? Should aid not be delivered? Because essentially the Taliban are in control. What do you see as a practical way forward, and what can the people who are attending this talk do to talk to their own representatives about making sure that the people, ordinary people, don't suffer?
I think there's a lot of practical way without recognizing the Taliban, because they are not legitimate government anyway. They are not elected government. They are not the government to represent the people of Afghanistan. People are saying Taliban are the reality of Afghanistan, and I'm asking them, what about women? We women are not the reality in my country. We are not the reality. The Afghan people are not the reality. If the Taliban are the reality, so ask them to go and put voting boxes and let's see who is the reality. They are the reality. Politically, they occupied. Military, they occupied my country, because still for me they are a terrorist group. This is what the definition I could say. Although large, how I could say, campaign and lots of programs was been there to give a kind of good, beautiful makeup for the Taliban, try to make up them over and put them on a corner to see how beautiful they are. Oh, they will respect the women's rights, human rights, and they will have inclusive government. You know, so much energy was been wasted on that, giving them floor and recognition. You're talking about the recognition. No one asked the recognition when the Doha Agreement was been signed in 29 February 2020. No one asked the recognition when every single time for 18 months they have a direct negotiation with the United States of America special representative. Anyway, that was the past. Right now, what is necessary? I think it's not really justice to let more than 20 million people to die just because of poverty, because food security, human security is matter. There's a United Nations as a central organization. They can take action. There should be international organization to be engaged and involved for immediate and necessary humanitarian aid to Afghanistan to be delivered. This is how we can do without any kind of recognition. I think the people of Afghanistan was been receiving aid through all the time, through to the international organization. And over there, back home, there are some local organization, which is they can be a good partner for the international organization for receiving aid and distributing. When a government is a terrorist, okay, what about non-government organization? When they deduct women from the government body, what about the non-governmental organization to take that potential and capacity and use them back as a body of international and non-government organization and put them back into society? And I think there are ways, without any excuses, without politicizing the humanitarian aid. That would be the worst if Taliban would say, I will not let non-governmental organization to distribute the aid just politically, or the international community to say or bring excuses, oh, we cannot give that aid if the Taliban will not get to be recognized. No, let the humanitarian aid to be received and spent by Afghans immediately. But when it comes to the political process and procedure for their recognition, they have to fulfill those promises which is they made in Doha Agreement, or they should find the way to get legitimacy inside of Afghanistan. I think there is a bad need for humanitarian aid. I cannot imagine poverty, cold winter, disease, frustration, all the crises put hands together, including the Mother Nature stand against us just recently. So this is how we want and we need the humanitarian aid to go and be free beyond the narrative of politics.
One more question for me, and I'd like to open it up to the floor as well. But with the creation of the Doha office of the Taliban, there was in parallel a fairly sophisticated effort, a media campaign to present the Taliban as Taliban 2.0, if you will, as a different organization than the Taliban of the 1990s when it ruled Afghanistan. What do you think of that? And have they shown their true self, both in the way that they've composed their government and in the way that they've treated women?
I was not that optimistic as international media was about the Taliban. It was pretty clear those areas, which is at that time was under Taliban control, their behavior was clear about the women. And when it comes to respect the human rights values or basic rights or fundamental rights for the people, it was very clear. But to be honest, yes, Taliban changed, but not a positive change. They become more brutal. They are more disrespecting women. They are even fragile among themselves, because when you can see Taliban in a political way, they are delivering speeches, they are making statements, they are showing themselves a kind of responsible and committed for some sorts of, let's say, values. But when it comes to their behavior on the streets, how they are treating people, how they are reacting, it's completely devil. That's why I cannot believe that the Taliban changed, their mindset changed, their behavior changed from 90s to 2022. No, they are exactly the same, but unfortunately they get even more worse than before. Why? Because right now Taliban are divide themselves not in one group and a different group. So Haqqani is Haqqani network. They are very familiar the way of kidnapping, beating, killing, attacking, including having like a proper force for having a suicide machine that they are producing human to be brainwashed, which is, it can be a global security threat for every country, for our neighbors and beyond. And the Taliban, which is they were sitting in Doha and having like a nice clothes and talking a little bit English and speaking something and showing a little bit of flexibility. But, who don't know the nature of Taliban? I think the entire, you yourself, you know how the intelligence words work. I think everyone knows that Taliban didn't change to the positive. They are still the same. When it comes to the women, we've been from the very beginning their enemy. They became naturally our enemy. They are not letting us to go and work. You know what is sectarian discrimination means? You know what is discrimination against women, violence against women? They are not letting our voice to be raised. They are not letting us to be at school. They are not, except primary school, girls are not allowed for school. Women, which is, we've been part of our government, 25% of government body was been run by women. They eliminated immediately. You know what's a funny thing? They replace the Ministry of Women's Affairs with one of their worst misbehavior department, Voice and Virtual, which is they are lashing women on the street. So see this kind of replacement. That is, you can judge they changed or not. Their behavior is speaking more louder than their words.
You debated Zabiul Mujahid, the longtime Taliban spokesman, on YouTube. What did you say to him? Did you address him directly about that? How did he respond?
Yeah, I'm proudly I can say I punch him. Yes, on his face. Because he was saying all lies. He was bringing Islam as an excuse, and I give him example Islamic way. He bring the culture as an excuse, and I give them example of culture. So at the end, he had nothing. I'm a journalist. I do respect the journalism code. We do have a code that, okay, it's like when you are in a, boxing, one time you beat, second time, third time, you will let it for fourth time because you think he's too weak. And this is what I had to feel. Yes. Because he was been criticizing us for 20 years of our effort. He put a big question under that. And I said, what is your achievement which you kindly can name? I say the people support, the public support. I've been twice elected. What about you? And I say I'm proud about what we made, about the country, about the young generation, about the education, about the facilities, about the name of my country. So this is kind of debate which is, lots of people was been impressed, including the Taliban themselves. Because sometimes it's, the truth may hurt, but we have to speak from our heart and we have to say the truth is the truth.
I would just add to that I think one of the other important accomplishments of the 20 years before the collapse before the arrival of the Taliban was the sort of Afghanistan's boisterous independent media and a generation of Afghan journalists who had carved out a space for free speech that put some neighboring countries to shame. It was quite an accomplishment, and now many of those journalists have sought refuge abroad. This has definitely been a loss for Afghan journalism. But there are many more stories, and I think one of the reasons that we're here is to hear just a little bit more of your own personal experience of the drama that both preceded the events of this past August, as well as the struggle that you're currently going through. But I thought I might want to open it up to the floor. We do have some microphones here. And I think it's important that we, if you have questions for Shukria, I'd love to see if she has some personal insights, I think, that could shed light on what is still an urgent international crisis.
May I allow it for a few seconds to say?
Absolutely.
It's not very easy, I do believe, for great, wonderful ladies and gentlemen under this roof to understand the situation of Afghanistan. You may asking a question yourself, why and for how long Afghanistan should be a country that you should talk or contribute or think about it. But a nation which has been frustrated after 4 decades, we don't know. We are victim of what? Why we are fighting for? What is the reason? But let's think. Politics and big powers are taking human lives in different parts of the world. This is what is my understanding. This is what I can say, that we don't know why we pay so much lives in Afghanistan. If you see the number of widows, if you see the people with disability, if you see the frustration of 4 decades of violence, and still that nation is looking at you, and if you're offering the best, they will try their best more than you to welcome you. But right now, it's a different situation. I wish all of you can help and cooperate with those nations to be their voice. Now Afghanistan needs a global voice, and I'm requesting you all, be our voice by all means in every matter. Thank you.
A little bit difficult to see with the lighting, but I think we do have a question in the back here. Yes, sir.
Yeah, please. What do you think about the legitimacy of the Taliban office in Doha? Can the foreign government trust them? And if ever anything is agreed or there's open-mindedness there, can we trust that the Taliban members will follow what's been decided? Are they organized? There's anyone we know? Do we know who we're talking to? Do we know if they have any responsibility, legitimacy, and things like that?
The Doha office is old. It's been in 2009 when first time it's been established. And it was just an office for exchanging prisoners or those whom they've been taking hostage by Taliban, but that was not that popular as it is now. From my understanding and from the experience Taliban left behind, they are not the one that we can trust. I do understand there are some ideas and theories that there's a moderate Taliban. They need kind of recognition and support. But anytime they can be more dangerous than the other one. Because the ideology that Taliban are carrying on, there is nothing with the name of modernity. They are the reality we have to face, but they are not the reality to be legitimized. If you legitimizing today Taliban, tomorrow any other terrorist group may seek for the same. I think they got the legitimacy when the United States signed agreement with them. They got the legitimacy when the government, people of Afghanistan, and particularly women of Afghanistan was been putting sideline in the last 3 years from the entire peace process. So, which is that peace wasn't end up with a peace. I think the great lesson the international community and governments was been taking is the Doha Agreement was not been implemented. The ceasefire wasn't been made. They didn't cut their tails from Al-Qaeda and other terrorist networks. But still, as I understand, there are some appetites to work close with the Taliban. There are some appetites to support Taliban. There are some agendas, which is I had no clue where it will lead, but I can say I'm witness to see the Chinese invasion in Afghanistan at the moment.
So what do you recommend if we cannot work with them? Or?
Strongly, from my opinion, United Nations had the authority to take action inside of Afghanistan or outside on behalf of Afghanistan. What's really needed, another, not a military kind of engagement, but a political engagement. United Nations, according to their chapter, they have the authority to take decision when their countries are not feeling themselves safe. So interim government, and later on they should be for a legitimate government. We have to find the exit way from the situation we are stuck in today. Bringing excuses, giving legitimacy for Taliban may not solve the problem. If today they are doing this, where they are seeking legitimacy, they are not respecting law, they are not respecting Islam principle, they are not respecting Afghan values, they are not respecting international convention. What is the guarantee tomorrow with the legitimacy, with the recognition, they will do their best? No, they will do their worst again. So I hope this mistake may not happen.
I see up front is Christina Lamb. There should be a mic en route.
Thanks. Hello, Shukria. It's really moving to hear your experience. I think everybody here really feels for you, and it's heartbreaking to see what's happened in Afghanistan. I wanted to ask you what you think about what the Afghan government did, the way that President Ghani and his government fled the country as the Taliban came. I was there in September and October, and almost everybody I spoke to was more angry about that than they were about the Taliban. And I also was interested to hear your view about Pakistan's role in the Taliban takeover. Thanks.
Of course, Taliban are the great son of Pakistan, and they are the supporter. Pakistan is the factory they made the Taliban to keep their strategic depth in Afghanistan alive. And right now they are really enjoying, they are talking on behalf of Taliban everywhere. And internationally they also got some kind of benefits, even the aid going through to the Pakistan, to Afghanistan. So if you see all the international organization, so that's not only politically but financially also Pakistan is gaining a lot, as always. But when it comes to the Ashraf Ghani government, shame on him. It's maybe not the good word to say, but this is how we feel about because I support Ashraf Ghani in 2014 till John Kerry involved and asked for a government with both partners that they run for the election. And I say, it's better to be a constructive opposition rather than a position, in a weak position. So that was my opinion. But of course, I was surprised because I was in Kabul when the collapse happened. When I get into the airport, I saw our own border police, everyone was been just like a normal day, but later on things changed so rapidly. I hope nothing will be just that weak and narrow to be destroyed by one person. I wish at that time everyone had the capacity, everyone, including the first vice president, second vice president, the head of parliament, and the minister of foreign affairs. So according to our constitution, we had these 4 other reserved to lead the country. Plus, why not UNAMA didn't take action? Because 6,000 US troops was already in the Kabul airport. It was not difficult to control the situation because every military was ready. The Kabul security was been taking so tight. So just only one announcement was enough from the United Nations or UNAMA office or the other politicians to say, hang on, if he gone, goodbye. But there are institutions. For me, I spent 24 years of my life, and particularly in the last 20 years, to build the institutions. You can build a building so easily, but building generation and institution, it takes so long. And it was solid. It wasn't something to be destroyed. But I don't know how it collapsed. Because individualism, it have a bad consequence in Afghanistan. And I think it's a great lesson for every country to do not rely on their individuals. But right now they are trying to struggle to find another structure. It's too late. People cannot trust neither them or neither those whom they feel they've been betrayed by them.
Thank you. We have a question in the 3rd row.
Thank you for all your input. But at the moment, it seems that Afghanistan has gone out of the media, out of the memory of many, and you would rarely hear about Afghanistan and what is happening in there. But this is one reality which I don't know how you as an Afghan can persuade the governments, which they don't have any appetite for intervening or even seeking solutions to the problem of Afghanistan. I don't know how you're going to do that. On the other hand, I think in Afghanistan, with the coming of Taliban, with all the consequences, there is a relative peace in there. How do you see that? I mean, there are 2 different questions I'm asking here, How do you see that? Because, and then the 3rd question is that we know that the governments before were corrupt and corruption was widespread. This is something everybody knows. How do we know that, it is not going to happen again if a change comes, and this is a big if with the situation at the moment?
Well, I'm surprised why everyone thinks right now Afghanistan is safe and secure. I'm really surprised. I'm sorry, but I'm just saying my own opinion. If you see the discipline in a prison is much different than any higher street outside of the prison. I believe people of Afghanistan now is living in a prison, and Taliban are the prisoner. That's why you can say it's safe. Because the Taliban was the cause of lack of security in Afghanistan. That was the Taliban was made a large number of suicide attacks, road bomb, magnetic bombs, mining and stuff like that. So when the cause of lack of security got power, of course, at least the simple thing they could deliver is security, but they didn't deliver security at all. Target killing still is going on. The crime rate is so high. When it comes to suicide, there's still suicide attacks. But what we are lacking is lack of information. Because, as you mentioned, there's no free press anymore. There's no free press anymore in Afghanistan. There's no freedom of expression. No one can say anything against the policy of the Taliban. We've been witness how they put the journalists and those whom they speak loud and they say, this is wrong, this is right, in a prison. So you say, the corruption still is going on. What do you think? A country can be led by mullahs? I believe unprofessional, unexperienced people, when they are taking, let's say, ministries, and especially those ministries needs technical people, that is corruption, because they cannot deliver any sorts of service to the public. So if you think, or I think, there's no corruption, no, there's a huge corruption, more than before. Because before people thought, and even I had thought, Taliban are not the group that they are engaged with the luxury, they will not take anything. No, right now each single of them are living in those luxury houses without a permission. It's not only the government official, even the normal citizens. They are doing lots of worse things, which is not covering by the media anymore, because media don't have the power. There should be solution. I'm not saying Afghanistan should go backward. We already been 100 years back. But there's a way we need to persuade the government of United Kingdom to be engaged with the people of Afghanistan and to put their effort globally to find a solution or consensus for making a new Afghanistan. We shouldn't let all the efforts of 20 years to be thrown in the ocean. That would be very sad to see.
We have a question in the back.
Yeah, hi. Hello, thank you so much for being here and sharing this evening. It's been so insightful. And I think one of the big things that is resonating with me is this lack of visibility into what's really happening and what organizations are still there and what they're doing. And I was left with the impression that it all happened really, really fast. And I wondered if that was Western media's portrayal of how everything happened, but was there civil unrest? Were there people on the streets fighting during this, what seems to have happened so fast, of the collapse of the government? Or was it fear or fatigue of the people that stopped them from going on the streets and fighting the Taliban from taking over?
When you are facing a brutal and a very barbaric regime such as Taliban, which is they are not listening, they don't believe the very civilian way, like protested people are going out with placards and asking for their rights. So I think people with empty hands cannot do much. They are not letting, they are not permitting, they are not allowing people to be on the street, but still brave women are every single day they are on the streets with their life costs. So I'm also sometimes asking that why the people of Afghanistan are not taking action against the Taliban. But sooner or later, I have a hope there will be people, same as today they are raising their voice against the Taliban. It's very difficult to raise your voice in front of the Taliban on their face, which is they are not feeling responsible for your safety. They can just give you response with the bullets. This is how it's happening. But still every day there are people on the street, and especially particularly the brave women and girls they are asking for. But sooner or later, I think the fatigue, as you mentioned, it may show up as a great power. And I hope that day will come soon.
I've got a mic here.
Yes, we have. Yes,
I've captured the mic.
Please.
Thank you very, very much for speaking to us tonight. I found it incredibly moving. You used the word shame about President Ashraf Ghani. I felt terrible, terrible shame over the shameful withdrawal of the West. I think it's. I think we'll take a very long time to recover from that. After the withdrawal, there were certain areas, weren't there, of resistance. And I'm wondering, I know that most of them either capitulated or whatever. Do you know if any of them are still operating, or is it in such an incredibly limited way that it's of no real consequence?
The resistance of Panjshir is still there, and still they are trying to mobilize their power. Time to time they are having a kind of press statements. But we all know that people of Afghanistan are tired for all kinds of military action. But from my understanding, the more solid, unrecognized resistance is the women. Without any title, without any international recognition, without any lobby, they're continuing. And I believe that resistance is based on values, and they will continue. So, and I believe for the good and great result of that valuable resistance of women in Afghanistan. And of course, politically, the resistance is still existent. And beside of that, I think there are some political activity. Soon, Oslo is hosting Taliban with some other government officials and with civil society members for a kind of peace talk or reconciliation. And let's see what's the outcome of that.
Thank you.
Yes, we have a question here. Sorry.
So we touched briefly on, is it me with the mic? Or the other? Sorry.
Please.
Forgive me if I talked over somebody else. We touched briefly on China's influence in Afghanistan. Perhaps an unfair question, but if we think about an economically independent and stable Afghanistan, what might that look like in the future, and what steps need to happen in the short term to push us in the right direction so Afghanistan can grow on its own 2 feet?
I say Chinese invasion. China is in any part of the world, they are not looking for a stable government with a good plan. And the current government doesn't have the capacity, government, not the regime, haven't have any kind of capacity to use the Afghan resources. Even they cannot use the human resource to be put in the right place for the right purpose. When it comes to natural resources, it's beyond their understanding. They cannot use Afghanistan as a corridor or as a bridge between South Asia and Central Asia. They cannot lead politically or economically. But to be honest, when I say if things going on the way it is, Chinese invasion may go in large in Afghanistan, because the natural resources of Afghanistan is very virgin, so Chinese need it. We do have shared border with China, which is easy. For Chinese, and the human rights, women's rights, those issues or freedom of expression are not matter, so they don't have any condition for the Taliban. And surprisingly, they are the only government that directly, immediately, they sent all their humanitarian aids to the hands of Taliban. And they ask, do whatever you want to do it. Before humanitarian aid, we've been facing the COVID-19 crisis. Chinese was the first one before any other country sent their support. They were there. But I'm surprised when you see the behavior of China with their Uyghur community, Muslim community in Chinese, and their sympathy and the floor they give to the Taliban. That's very surprising. So that means Chinese are very patient, more than any other countries, to wait for the right time. And they will do, just for the sake of those resources and geopolitically, for the connectivity of Afghanistan to be used. Of course, I have on my mind a stable Afghanistan in a picture, but not with the Chinese or any other invasion.
We had another question there. There we go. The mic is already there.
Hi, Shukria. I wanted to ask you a question about the future, and I'm sorry if it's a painful question. My family came here from Iran in the 80s, and there was a lot of hope in those initial years that it might be reversed after the revolution and they could go back. And I grew up watching my family realize slowly that that wasn't going to happen and that they had lost the country they knew. Firstly, what do you think? Do you think there's anything that could be done now to reverse what's happened in Afghanistan? And if not, what happens to these thousands of people who felt they had to be evacuated and didn't want to come to Europe or North America? They wanted to live in the country they've built for the last 20 years. But if that's gone, what happens to their identity and what happens to them as Afghans in the future?
Technically, this is like what I may do in the future. Because when I see the generation, I was a young girl, whenever my mom was cried, I would say, Mom, when the security and safety will come? And she would say, one day. And I remember one day my daughter, because I stopped her from going to school, the suicide attack happened very close on their way, and I was afraid if it happened again, I may lose. And she say, Mom, these things are every day. I will go to my school. And I myself, it's been generation and generation and generation. Hope is not something which is circumstances or situation can give to you. I remember when the first Taliban was been ruling, I running an underground school. I have no connection with the outside world at all, because there's no way to communicate. If I want to say hi to my mom through to the phone, I should cross Afghanistan border in Pakistan, and from Pakistan I was able to make a phone call. So see how marginalized and neglected Afghanistan was that. So still I have great hope, same as that time, in a different way. Still I believe the great potential in Afghanistan. Still I believe a revolution, meaningful revolution in Afghanistan. Still I believe it's not too late to start and to be engaged with Afghanistan in international level. That's why I say it's right time for United Nations, because the only organization had the authority is United Nations. Otherwise, if we let everything to go the way it is, Afghanistan will be a safe haven for all international terrorist network. And that's very alerting. That may be a global threat. So before Afghanistan reached to that point, I think there is a need some measures to be taken, some steps needs to be taken. Still there's a time for reconciliation. Still there's a time for Taliban to be reintegrated. Still there's a time to pressurize Pakistan and other countries where they are supporting Taliban. Still there's a chance today, but tomorrow may be too late. But still I have a great hope for that people there. And they will bring change, definitely this time.
Hi, follow on. I'm also from Iran. From practical experience, you mentioned, I have two, it's twofold. You mentioned about NGOs receiving international aid as a way of alleviating the poverty situation, if I understood it correctly. I know from our experience in Iran, NGOs in Iran would not engage with Western organizations because of the adverse consequences of that. So I don't know, from a practical point of view, is that possible? Could NGOs in Afghanistan receive aid from outside in view of the kind of problems that they will face from the Taliban if they are engaging with Western organizations? And on the other hand, from a practical point of view, I know you're still very raw from what's happened. It's only been 5 or 6 months that you're here, but have you been able to, not you personally, but the diaspora, have you been able to set up a network of lobbying the international governments, the United Nations, or are you still too fragmented internationally to be able to find a unified voice to lobby the international organizations? Where are you at in that? Is that too soon to expect something to have formed?
We already formed. There's an informal Afghan Women's Forum. We are lobbying. We had representative in the United Nations. They had a speech talking and asking for women's rights, and of course for the international organization to be engaged. And actually, I believe women force are quite well organized, more than any other. So no matter which part of the world we are, still we have our monthly, weekly, and immediately programs, and that's including the space. We are using Twitter, social media, everything, Zoom, mostly, largely. Yes, internationally we are building a platform, even in United Kingdom. I think in February early we will have a workshop by strategizing the steps we need to, with the cooperation of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, FCO, Foreign Commonwealth Office. So this is how it is, the correct term here. And when it comes to the Afghan local organization, we've been always cooperating with the international organization, and Taliban have no issue with that. Of course, they have an issue with those organizations which is led by women, but at the end, the aid is something which is even Taliban needed. So they cannot stop the door of receiving aid. That's why it's easy for international organization and Afghan organization to put hands together and to distribute. Why it's necessary? Because if non-governmental organization is going up, delivering service to the people, since they have the capacity, the knowledge, and the experience, the government feel themselves to obey. So that is how we can keep the balance between who is ruling and who's distributing. Otherwise, if everything goes to the hands of Taliban, there is no guarantee it will go to the right hands. There's no guarantee they will distributing the aids equally for every Afghans, because right now we are witness of minorities. They are having a very bad behavior when it comes to religion between Shia Sunni. They are showing worse behavior with the Shias. When it comes to the gender between men and women, they are eliminating and removing women from every single layers. So that's why we need something solid beyond the lanes and layers to distribute the aid.
So we have a question online that's come in from Jackie Pauling, who's watching this on our partners Frontline online on their Zoom feed. Do you think that underground girls' schools will spring up again?
Oh, it is functioning. At that moment we are talking, it is functioning. It's just you need to put your effort together. Today these online classes is going on, some teachers from outside, some volunteers. Even recently they start this kind of psychotherapy, you know, like because we are psychologically we need some kind of help. Even those things start. Yes, underground schools need to be, and there's a need for that. Although Taliban promise by March they will let girls to go to school because they bring a excuse of segregation. They had no brain because the school in Afghanistan already was been segregated between girls and boys. So because they never been at school, they never been in Afghanistan, that's why they don't have a knowledge. They bring an excuse of something which is already it's been existing. Yeah, these things are functioning.
If I may, as I'm holding the microphone, I think we're at time, but on behalf of the Conduit, thank you sincerely for...